Hey, everybody, Steve here, Local Level Podcast. I'm sitting here today with Michael MZ Ziffra, ROCKIT Mike, it's a real pleasure to have you on.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me on, Steve. I'm excited to be here. So, by the way, if you call me Mike, I won't know who you're talking to. So, please, MZ. You know, my friends call me MZ. So,
Right.
I think the only person that calls me Mike still is my mom.
Isn't that strange, though? Everybody's kind of got their circle of people that, call them something special. It's funny. Yeah, I got introduced to you as MZ from Max. Shout out to Max Barrick out there. And, tell us the story about the MZ thing. Is it just kind of like a term of endearment type of thing, or how'd you come to that?
Yeah. So, if I was a rapper, I'd be Rappa Z, but, I can't rap. So I'm just MZ. When I owned my business in my prior life, we would use telephones. There weren't any fax machines, computers, nothing. So everything was done by phone communication. And at the time, I had 5 other Michaels working with me. Right. So it was really confusing as to who you were talking to. So I went to MZ. Actually, several of the other Mikes went to their initials too. But really, the MZ came about just because simplifying and clarifying, so people knew who they were asking for.
Yeah. Well,
so, and it's really my brand now, and people like it. It's they hear MZ, they remember it, and it's kind of endearing right now.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, Mike is Michael. My dad's name is Mike, actually, so I'm familiar. But there's so many Mikes. Everybody knows a Mike. People confuse me for Mike sometimes, so I definitely know how you needed that differentiator. But you touched on something. You have been in the business, the business world for years and years. If somebody goes on your website, ROCKIT, not like rocket, but, or actually no, like rocket, not
like ROCKIT. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That was kind of a battle in naming the company. I wanted ROCKIT with an IT because I want to rock it as opposed to rocket with a trajectory.
Right.
It's really a tie-in and a play off of my prior business and prior industry, because I was in the entertainment world and I worked with a lot of rock bands. And I felt that I wanted to carry that history over a little bit with the rock, but rock it. And then put on the business accelerator, because that's what I do, is I help businesses accelerate with my business and knowledge.
Definitely. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, we're going to dig deep into it, but just as far as your background goes, you touched on, being in events and things like that. If you go on rocketbusinessaccelerator.com, you have a bio and you lay out a few things, White House contact. For 40 years, you've been in the business space, all these things. Can you unpack that a little bit? Tell us how you got to opening your business. Tell us, kind of the, lead up to everything where we are right now, if you can.
Yeah. We'll talk about my favorite subject. That's me. It's all good.
That's what we're here for.
I'm a big music fan, Steve. I really like music. And what drove me to start my first company at the age of 20 was actually music. And I thought I wanted to be a recording engineer, a sound engineer, and realizing that I would have to do it on my own because I can't work for anybody. Truth be told, I've never had a job, so I don't know how to interview. I don't have a resume. I've been a lifetime entrepreneur, so never really owned a job. So I realized that I wouldn't be able to start my own recording studio because of the capital outlay. So I took an investment of $1,000 and actually started the business by being a DJ. That's what I did back in 1979 when it was all the rave. And when I started the business, nobody was really doing it at the level that I started to do it. So back then, people would find me through the Yellow Pages, if you remember those, Yellow Pages. Yeah. And I was the first one to actually capture the title in the Yellow Pages, disc jockey.
Mm.
So I started being a DJ, and did that for a couple of years, and saw an opportunity of actually morphing into putting on outdoor live festivals. So again, nobody was doing them, right? So now every town is doing, currently these live festivals, except for COVID. I guess we're not doing them.
Yeah, right now.
But I was the first one out there doing live festivals. So it was kind of fun because people didn't understand what I wanted to do. So I would call up different municipalities, let's say, and try to talk to them about my idea, and they would bite on it, seem interested. Then I'd go in and have a deeper conversation with them. And they said, that's really a good idea. Let's try that. And that's how really the festival market was born. Again, nobody was doing it at the level that I was doing it. And eventually I got bored with doing the live festivals. So I iterated the company again and took my service and started providing staging and lighting for business meetings. So I was really on the cutting edge of what are now all these business meetings that you see Fortune 500 companies doing. And when I sold the company in January 2018, that's what I was doing, and that's what I was really specializing in, was business meetings for Fortune 500 companies. So you can kind of see the timeline and how the business morphed over that 40-year period. It was an interesting journey. I have a lot of fun stories that you and I can talk about off air, and some I really can't share on air because you can only imagine being in the entertainment world what some of those are. Yeah. But along that journey, I did work with the White House for several decades. So if you look on TV and you see the president doing an event, I was the person that lit them and provided all the platforms for all the press to be on, and coordinating that. I even met the presidents. I have some presents from different presidents. And, that was kind of unique to be known as that guy, and to be in with the Secret Service and have those types of relationships. So along with working with dignitaries and prime ministers, some rock stars, some movie stars, even sports stars. I was lucky enough to have the contract for the city of Chicago. So all those celebrations in the cities for all the sports teams that actually won championships, if you saw The Last Dance and they look and you can see the Petrillo band shell out there, and they shoot it at a distance, that's all my equipment that's out there. Several movies I was in or helped, Batman, Spider-Man, Transformers. So it was an interesting journey and career for a while. But after 40 years of doing it, Steve, it really started to get, bored, right? I got tired of it.
Well, you got out on a perfect timing. Couldn't have done it better. I mean, getting out in 2018, we all know what happened the next year. So it sounds like you got off on the right stop. But I mean, 40 years of doing that. I mean, we like I said, if you go on business or Rocket Business Accelerator, you'll see kind of the bio, and it's just a little bit. But there's so much. You just touched on so many different things, and we don't even have enough time to go into them specifically individually. But you left out a lot there. And one of the things that I like to talk about on this is kind of the learning experience, because what you do now is kind of the culmination of all of the lessons that you've learned, I would assume, over that 40-year period. And, you're kind of putting that in a way that you can, impart that on other people that are going through struggles now to help them grow. A career like that, there's a lot. So without going into the details, or maybe go into the details, but what were some of the biggest struggles that you had? Did you ever get to a point where your head got too big and you had to kind of take a seat for a little while? I would assume that there was some things that happened in your life, when you're kind of dealing with those people, rubbing elbows, rubbing shoulders with the president and Secret Service and rock stars and all that can kind of go to your head. Did that ever play a part?
Yeah, that's a really good question and very very interesting question. It never really went to my head. I never wanted to be that guy who was awestruck by being in the location. I always felt that I belonged in the room, and I always wanted to make sure that I conducted myself in a way where people would be comfortable with me being in the room. So I would say a real quick story. The only time I stepped out and really became a fan was when I met Michael Jordan after the second Bulls championship. He was walking off the stage and he had his hat on, smoking his cigar and carrying the trophy. And I popped out from behind where I was, and he walked over and I gave him a high five, and we're shaking hands, and we're talking. We were talking for maybe 7-8 minutes, had a great conversation, laughing, just yucking it up. And I get back to my office in Schaumburg from being down in Chicago, and I walk into the office, and people, my staff, are looking at me going, what are you doing, MZ? What was that? I had no idea what they were talking about. And then they filled me in that, of course, when I was talking to Michael Jordan, every news camera from around the world was filming me talking to Michael Jordan. Wow. And I had no idea. Other than that, I really just kind of played low key. And, the second part of your question, I do have 40 years of what not to do experience.
Right.
I have a lot of that, and a lot of lessons learned, and a lot of humbling experience from that. And really, what I'm doing currently is it's a model that is an operating system that I implement into different businesses. And when I'm implementing this process in the business, I pull out different life experiences to help business owners relate to what I'm trying to show them or to teach them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you touched on it a little bit, as far as the system, the operating system. The problem that we have with a lot of these business type of, incubators or gurus, and kind of like the world that this business environment is based on is, there's a lot of people that are given fake information. There's a lot of people that are given information because they feel like they have the answer, or they can tell you how to do your business better. And unfortunately, I think most people realize now that a lot of these people are grifters, but you do something different. You kind of just guide people into understanding how they're doing their thing. Can you tell us a little bit about how your system differs from these other type of grifters and business gurus? Yeah,
I love the way you put that. That's well said. I think I may use that the next time I'm talking to a prospect, or maybe I'll bring you along, Steve, and just listen to what Steve is saying.
I'll talk to you. I'm the color guy. I'm the color guy. Yeah.
Yeah, you could be the color guy, right? Yeah. So I came across this system as I was running my other business, because I tried several different methodologies to improve my operations. I worked with the Jack Walsh strategic system, graduated from that. I worked with some people might know Michael Gerber in the E-Myth, which is phenomenal in itself, but it didn't quite deliver everything that I needed for my business. I went through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business course, and none of them really delivered in what I'm doing now. And what I'm doing now is called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. And it's based off the book Traction from Gino Wickman. Okay. And if any of our listeners are interested in learning more about EOS, you can go get the book Traction and actually read about it. So the first year that I implemented EOS into my business, I grew the business 112% profit, bottom line. So I found it to be very effective. And I'm not a consultant in the traditional sense. So I'm not going to come into a business, Steve, and tell somebody what they're doing wrong. Okay, that's not what I do. I actually work with the business comprehensively from top to bottom. So here's an example. A lot of entrepreneurs feel that, geez, if I could just grow my revenue, I want to grow my top line. If I can do that, it's going to solve all the problems I'm having. And in reality, all that's going to do is put more stress further down your business. And if you don't have the processes in place to support that increased revenue, you're going to find that your customers are coming to you and leaving out the back door just as quick because you're over-promising and under-delivering.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's based on 6 key principles or 6 key components. And every business needs these 6 key components. Don't care what business you're in, okay? The 6 key components are vision. So we want to make sure that everybody is on the same page with where the organization is going. So if you have more than one person working in your business, let's say 3, 4, 5, 10, if you went around and asked those individuals, what is the vision of the company? I bet they would be in the ballpark, but they would be vastly different also. Okay. If you ask 10 people, you're probably going to get 10 different responses.
Right.
So we have to make sure we get everybody on the same page, right? Then we need to make sure that we have the right people for the organization. Each organization defines the right people slightly different, Steve. So we want to make sure that the people that you have in your organization are aligned to be able to deliver that vision that we talked about. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then there's another key component, and that key component is data. It's all about measurements.
Right.
So I found that entrepreneurs, we're really good at running our business on gut feeling and ego and what we think is going on.
Right.
But in reality, the best decisions are going to be made not subjectively, but objectively by having the right measures. Yeah. So setting the organization up on actual scorecards where you can now start predicting and tracking how you're doing over the long term. Yeah. Once I've identified those 3 key components with the leadership team, I find that the business becomes transparent, which means that issues and problems start to arise, and we need an effective way of being able to resolve those issues. Okay? Yeah. And we have a system that absolutely changes the business and the business owners' lives. Imagine being able to resolve issues the first time, the right way, and make them go away forever. So have you ever been in a meeting, Steve, where an issue's raised, right? And there's 5 or 6 people sitting around a table talking about an issue?
Yeah.
And you discuss the issue and everybody has their input. And then you look at the clock. It's like, oh, geez, it's 5 o'clock. We have to go. Yeah. So everybody leaves. And then you have a meeting a week later. You have 5 or 6 people sitting around the table. What are you talking about? What are you discussing?
The same thing. The
the
thing.
same problem,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I eliminate that and really help business owners get to the root cause of what the real issues are. What we call issues or problems often are really just the tip of the iceberg of what the real root cause of the problem is. So I like to tell a story. If I can, is it okay if I tell a story?
Sure.
Yeah, I like to tell this story of the Jefferson Memorial, where the United States government was having problems with the stone crumbling in the Jefferson Memorial. Well, they found that it was crumbling because of frequent washings of the stone.
Right.
Well, they did a little bit of research and found that it was being caused because of bird droppings. There was a lot of pigeons in there, right? And they were just messing up all over, so they were cleaning the stones. Well, they asked, well, why are there so many pigeons? Why are there so many birds in there? Well, they came to find out that it's because there's abundant food supply. There's a lot of little spiders there. And why are all these little spiders there? Well, come to find out, there's these little insects called midgets that are present in the Jefferson Memorial. Well, why are there so many of these little insects? Well, you know what happens at night when you turn on lights? Insects get excited, right? And they come and they find the lights and they make their way into the Jefferson Memorial. You've got all these spiders that are catching them. You got all these birds that are eating the spiders, and the birds are messing up the Jefferson Memorial.
Yeah.
So the real root cause of the problem wasn't that we were washing the Jefferson Memorial too much. It was abundant food supply caused by turning on the lights, right? So they delayed turning on the lights 1 hour. By 1 hour, they reduced it all the frequent washings by 90%. So getting to the root cause of what the real issue is what I help business owners do.
Well, that is one of the things. I mean, that story in itself says a lot, because the majority of people are focused on what's happening in front of them right now. And, you're swinging a hammer at those things, but, the foundation of what you're working with needs to be correct for everything on top of it to make any sense. I mean,
Absolutely.
It's very hard. I mean, in a business, not to get emotional about the day-to-day activities, the numbers that are in front of you right now, but that's why you have to have your staff kind of report to you and let you know, this and that and this and that, so you can make the decision. So, when you're not on the same page, it makes sense to me where, you can run afoul pretty quickly. I mean, you can get emotional with things. People might not give you the information that you want to hear, all those different things. So, I mean, you're dealing with humans. When you have these conversations with, business owners and management teams, how do you overcome that kind of there's always a little bit of an ego too, right? So how do you overcome that human component so you can get to the foundation, so you can start making those changes and fortify the foundation so what they're building on will stand?
That's a really good question, Steve. And let me first say, I think it comes out of humility, because over my 40 years of running my business, I have brilliantly solved the wrong problem too many times. So it's being able to check my biases and really listen to what the dynamics are of the room and the interaction. And then I tried to lead by asking questions. So my role really is to try to facilitate a conclusion to whatever the issue or whatever we're discussing between the group of people in the room. And again, it's done by asking questions. I try not to tell people the solution, because again, I could be off base.
Right.
And we all have our own cognitive biases. We're all going to search for our own truth, and our own truth is going to come to us from our own perspective, right? So now if there's a big beach ball, right, and there's the 3-4 different colors on the beach ball, Steve, and you're holding one end side of the beach ball, I'm holding another end, and my end is white and your end is blue. Well, your perspective is going to be blue, mine's going to be white. So we all have our cognitive biases of searching for the truth. So really working with the team to help them understand their differences, and again, leading them with questions to come to the best conclusions. And let me also add that during these discussions, we come to some fierce agreements. There's some very interesting conversations that take place in these rooms. But it needs to be that way if you're going to come to the best conclusions for the organization.
Yeah. I would imagine that it would get a little difficult sometimes. I mean, when you call people out and everybody has a role to play. So if maybe the player's not executing the way that they need to, and you're pointing that out in a room of, the people that are writing the check, that could get a little stressful, a little tense, I would imagine. How do you do you allow that to happen? Do you just let it go and whatever? Do you try to mitigate that in these meetings?
Right. So I typically bring some boxing gloves and a little bell and just ding and let them go at it. Right. No, you know what? As long as the conversation is professional and does not degrade into personal accusations, I let them go. Right. I let them go, and I try to mediate the conversations to make sure that everybody is being heard. Because if you're going to come to the best conclusions, you have to have a foundation of trust, first of all, so you can honestly say what you're thinking and know that people are going to receive it. They don't have to agree with it, but at least be heard. So then you can have the conversation and it can be real at the same time. So I've been in meetings where 4 or 5 individuals really went at another individual who just wasn't performing correctly. And their role as a leadership team is to call that out and say, hey, MZ, you're dropping the ball and you're killing us. What are we going to do here? If you don't step it up, then somebody else is going to have to step it up for you. And those are the types of conversations that do take place. That it's radical candor, Steve.
Yeah, honesty is the best policy. Sometimes it's hard to hear it though, especially when you're in it. When you're in it and you're working, and that's kind of what you're doing. It's really hard to hear it sometimes if you're not doing it right. Nobody likes to hear that they're messing things up if they think they're doing it right, or if they're giving it their all. Unfortunately, giving it your all doesn't necessarily mean you're doing it right or it's going in the right direction. And you kind of said that too. You've solved all the wrong problems just perfectly. Doing things that shouldn't be done efficiently is one of the worst things that you can do as a business owner. Being effective and efficient is really important. There's no sense to do something that shouldn't be done at all. Right. And with team members, most of the time, Steve, somebody who's not performing to the level of expectation, they typically have a good idea. And if they're honest with themselves, they're going to own up to it and try to get better. It's when individuals just don't want to face reality, then that's a whole different conversation. Right. And sometimes you have to call a timeout, right? And there has to be a separate conversation that takes place between whoever before you can continue the meeting to get things back on track. For the listeners, we're talking and this applies to all businesses, but we're talking primarily the people that you're sitting in a boardroom with, really going over these issues with. Their businesses, mid to large type of businesses. So can you lay out for us kind of the customer, I guess the client, the prospect or whoever, who do you work with?
Right. So, Rocket Business Accelerator really is meant to work with businesses that have anywhere from 5 to 200 employees and typically generate a revenue of 1 million to 20 million in revenue. And I tend to work with the leadership team. So 3 to 7 people typically are in a room together when I'm working with clients. Mm-hmm. So unlike a consultant who tends to work with a different department, whether it be marketing or finance, to help them figure out whatever's going on that needs to be fixed. Yeah, I tend to work with the whole leadership team regarding, again, their business comprehensively. And I just wanted to go through the other 2 key components because we got to the fourth one. We did the vision, we did the people, we did the data, we did the issues. And the 5th one is the process component. And that's systemizing everything in the business. Every business has 6 to 10 core processes, and being able to document those. Human resources, how you hire, how you fire, how you maintain, reward people, your finances, your operations, your marketing, your sales, and just get them documented at a high level. So I was working with a client recently, and one of the members of the team says, we really are doing well on our processes, MZ. Our finance person was out, and I actually had to call in payroll. I pulled out the document, and I followed the procedure, and we were able to get our payroll because of it. So that's the importance of having your systems processed. And not only that, it's the quickest way to scale a business too, because then everywhere you go in the business, people are doing things the right way and the best way every single time. One person isn't doing it this way and another person's doing it this way.
And, to jump in there, one of the things that I find, it is very important to kind of have guidelines for the way things should be done, best practices, not only because of the fact that we are dealing with humans, businesses are made out of humans, and there are differences of opinion, and people do quit and people leave their core people sometimes. Maybe there's a disagreement and maybe they have that knowledge in their head how it operates and how that process is done. But if you don't have that written down and that person leaves, then you're stuck holding the bag. There's a lot of instances where I've dealt with people, specifically in my line of work, with marketing and then also IT, even more specifically, where somebody will go that is the point of contact. And now the communication is it's totally chaotic. And then the business really, really suffers because of that. So you really hit something that is close to home for me because I deal with it all the time. Can you drill down a little bit about how you form that process, how you get those best practices put together, give people a little taste of, what MZ does when he's in the boardroom?
Yeah. And I like your example. Imagine an IT firm, and you have an IT technician who comes in and works on your computer system who is not available when you need them. And now somebody else comes in, and because the methodologies were different between each technician, the new technician isn't going to know where things were left off or how things were done. It's so confusing. Right. And it doesn't need to be. So really what we do is we start with the Pareto Principle. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's simply the 20-80 rule, right? We all know about the 20-80 rule. 20% of our clients actually provide 80% of our profit. If you think about your clothes, Steve, you probably wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time.
Oh, definitely.
So yeah, that's couple examples of the 20-80 rule. So what we do is first we help the business owner or leadership team identify what are the 6 to 14 or maybe 18 core processes in the business. Again, the human resources, the finance, the operation, whatever those are. It's the first thing that we have to do. Then we have to look at the individual steps that it takes to perform that job. This is where the 20-80 rule comes in, because we're only going to document the 20% of the steps that will get us 80% of the information of being able to perform that job function. Because if we try to document every step, we're going to have a 700-page standard operating procedure manual, and guess what? Nobody's going to read it. And by the time this client has to call in payroll, it's already going to be the end of the month. So we do this very simple on a 3 to 5 page document for each of these processes. So everything I try to do is to simplify everything in the business. It's like Steve Jobs, right? We know about Steve Jobs, started Apple, but then he got removed, right? Yeah. They fired him. He left Apple and started another business. And what happened to Apple? It started to go down, right? Apple actually tanked. So they realized it and they asked Steve Jobs to come back. So Steve said, yeah, come back. What is the first thing Steve Jobs did when he came back, Steve? Are you familiar with this? Any idea?
I think he fired a lot of people, didn't he? Or he killed off a lot of the products that they were developing, I think was the main thing.
Exactly. Yeah. He stopped. They had something like 84 different products that they were providing. Yeah. And within those 84 products, there was a variance for different businesses that need different services within those products. It was way too complex. Right. Yeah. So the first thing he did was simplify. So that's one of the things that I encourage my business clients and leadership teams to do is, how do you root out complexity in your business? Because I can guarantee you complexity has rooted itself in your business because you're working in the business. You often don't see it. Right. Yeah. So everything I do is simplify. And that's one of the ways that I do it with helping them identify their processes and get them documented.
Well,
and the last thing I do with it is I have them roll it out and make sure that it's followed by also everybody's doing it.
So you follow up with them afterwards? Do you do a, kind of like a, I don't know, next quarter checkup or whatever? Or is that extra?
I tend not to charge extra. I enjoy talking business. So if my clients call me and need me, I don't charge them extra. I only charge them for the time that we're together in an actual scheduled session.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's all about, for me, my process, Steve, is all about giving the tools and the knowledge to the leadership team in the business and helping them scale their business to be able to get what they want out of their business in a matter of months as opposed to years. So my typical engagement is anywhere from 18 months to 24 months. And after that time period, they typically don't need me anymore. A couple of my clients do stay on longer just because they like to work with me and they just don't want to do this on their own. But my goal is eventually to put the client out there and they don't need me anymore, unless it's a question they have for whatever they're doing.
Now, I worked for a business management consulting company that is no longer in business, which is kind of funny. And it's interesting though, because a lot of these types of companies will tell you, like I was saying before, kind of, they will give you a book. They'll have somebody come in, bill you hours, lot at a high level, and tell you all the different things that you're doing wrong, and then give you a big giant binder that tells you all the best practices of how to do all these different things. And then they, go on to the next one. And 90% of the time, you walk away with a giant bill and a binder that you don't understand. So how do you work that out. And I imagine, like what you just said, that you kind of are in these conversations with people. But do you go through, if you're looking at the top level, the owner of the company doesn't necessarily know what the person in the mailroom is doing. How do you get from the top of the company to the little guy that's on the floor? How do you navigate that and make sure that that kind of connection happens, so the effort that you're putting in actually gets heard by the people that need to hear it?
Yeah, I really appreciated your story, and the consultant's going to come in with a binder, hand it to the business owner, and say, good luck, or if you want to continue to pay me however many thousands of dollars an hour or whatever, right. I'll stay and help you implement this. I actually have a process that's meant to remove me eventually. Mm-hmm. So one of the tools that I use to help cascade the reporting structure to make sure that everybody is getting the information that they need is called the accountability chart. Okay. People that are listening to us are going to recognize the organizational chart, but I call it the accountability chart because I drive accountability from top to bottom into the chart. Okay. So everybody understands what their role is, what their function is, and what they're responsible for delivering. And I believe that there's a unique way that as an implementer of the EOS system that we use to build the accountability chart. I'll give it to you at a real high level. There's really 3 steps to it. The first step is to build the structure of the accountability chart, meaning the functions or the seats, right? The jobs that people need to do. Because as entrepreneurs, what we tend to do is look around at the different people we have available, and then we try to build the structure for the people that we have currently. Yeah. Well, I encourage my teams to build the structure first. The second thing that we do is identify what are the roles within that function. So now we have the structure and all the different functions, human resources, marketing and sales, operations, finance, whatever they are. Then I identify the different roles that need to be outcomes from each one of those functions. Mm-hmm. And guess what the last thing is I do, Steve? Tell me. Then we start putting people in the roles or the functions. Yeah. Okay. Most of the time, entrepreneurs they do the people first. Yeah. Right. Because this is what we have to work with. Well, at the end of the day, on several occasions after I work with my teams, Steve, a year later, 18 months later, there's quite a few different people in the organization because I've helped them move the underperformers or the people that don't belong there, the emotion, not the right people, not the right seats, out, and they have the right people in there.
And that plays into my experience too. I've worked in a lot of different offices, a lot of different types of environments and structures. Some family businesses, some totally corporate where it's you don't even know the people, all different things. And the bottom line is a lot of times when you're in a management scenario or an office scenario, people are driven by the relationship with the person. And what will happen is if the work is not there, they'll make excuses because they like the person and they have that emotional connection with the person. And they know that they just had a baby or they just did this. But, the bottom line is, unfortunately, in these businesses, especially when there's different levels, if you're holding the bag for the people that are underperforming at the bottom, it does trickle up, as far as how it amplifies it every time that it goes up, so the middle manager now is the person holding the bag because they're underperforming, and so on and so forth. And, it's very hard to identify that because we are humans and there is that loyalty component. So it does make sense to me. And it is counterintuitive to me as well for a lot of different reasons to focus on the business first and get the practices in place first. So you can kind of take the emotional component out of it a little bit. So you can have, and I think it makes it easier for the emotional component. If you have something to point to that says, well, if you aren't able to do this, then you're not performing. And it's not just an arbitrary decision that you're just not doing it right, because, it's so difficult because you're dealing with people. And I hate to always, nobody likes when somebody gets fired unless they're just evil or something. But,
right.
It's a sad thing, when somebody that you like is not cut out for the job and you have to let them go. I think anybody that's been in business or has had a business has had this happen. And it's a very hurtful and it's an upsetting thing for everybody. So, it makes a lot of sense. And that is a wise thing that you have. And I can see why a lot of people kind of need that, that outside influence to explain that that's important to put in place. And I can see the value in that.
Remember that what I do is comprehensive for the whole business. So when these types of difficult decisions have to be made, Steve, there's structure in place to be able to support those decisions being made. Now, that doesn't alleviate the pain from having to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Yet, if it's done correctly, the person who is being released back to the workforce shouldn't be surprised that that conversation is being had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a process in place on how you're going to follow up and let people know who need to perform better, how to do that and how they're doing along the way. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I wish I could have done differently in my old business, and I think any business owner, entrepreneur who has employees will identify with this, is I kept the wrong person too long, exactly because of what you were talking about, not wanting to have that conversation. Yeah. And imagine having a system where you can have that structure in place to be able to help that person too, when you have to release them back to the workforce, but also the business to be able to move faster to identify when that change needs to happen.
I'm not quite sure exactly who the quote is from, but I've heard this. I don't know what your thoughts on it, but it's fire fast and hire slow. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And again, it's more difficult to do. A lot of times, if we're busy, business is growing, somebody may be 50% good at their job, and you just need the warm body in there. You got to get fill that position. So you just take whoever, hoping that they're going to work out. Yeah. And I actually have a tool that I implement and introduced to the leadership team to use as a filter to make sure that you have the right person in the right seat in every spot within your organization. Imagine that.
That's very if you can achieve that, then you're in a good spot. That's for sure. That's like a unicorn if you could figure that out. But
it does work, and I will tell you that it's not 100% effective, but it's 80% effective, and 80% effective is a lot better than most businesses and where they operate right now, and being able to get the right people that they need.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, we were, I tell everybody when I do this beforehand that an hour is never enough time, because what you have going, what you do is a lot more complex than what we can cover in an hour, and unfortunately, we just came up to that hour point. So I want to let everybody know how to contact you. I want you to, maybe give a closing message to anybody listening, maybe some free advice. I know you've already given a little bit, but tell everybody first, what do you think? What's the most important thing, or one of the most important things that people can do right now with everything going on, with all the uncertainty and all that type of stuff? What is the most important part of somebody's business to really work on right now so they can, get the other things worked out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think there's a uniqueness to that answer based on where different businesses currently are and what their weakness is. I would say that if I was in the business market running a business, I think I would do a deep dive and take an assessment of where we're at and where we would like to go. And hopefully I don't have to adjust my long-term goal. I can keep that in place, knowing that all I have to do is make some fine adjustments based on the information that we have currently, because that's all we have. We only know what's going on now. We don't know what's going to go on 24 months or 36 months or 60 months from now. Right. So we can set ourselves up for that long term and keep our eye on that ball and just make minor tweaks, hopefully minor tweaks, based on what our current reality is to keep us moving towards that long-term goal.
Yeah.
That's what I would suggest.
Okay. Well, every business is different, right? And I mean, it's hard to kind of, put you on the spot like that a little bit, but no, I mean, it's as far as broad advice goes, it makes sense to understand what your plans are and what your goals are, and, get a real reading in a pulse of where you are realistically, and not just, how you feel, like you were saying before. Take an assessment, really look at who's around you, what the lay of the land looks like, and maybe what it's going to look like a few steps ahead. And kind of use all the information that you have available to you. And like we were talking about before this interview, focus on the things you can change and not the things you can't change.
Always. Yeah. And if you're looking at a problem or an issue, Steve, you can't look at it in the same fashion that caused it. You have to look at it different, and you have to ask different questions if you're actually going to resolve it. But in business, issues and problems aren't ever going to go away.
Yeah.
It's really how effective and efficient you're going to become at handling them so you can handle the next one. Definitely. The other thing is urgency is really the enemy of running a small business, because we're always drawn to whatever the urgent problem is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At the dire effect of really getting derailed from what's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it happens too often.
Yeah. It's easy to get caught up in what's shiny right in front of you, and making a emotional decision in something that is probably not the thing that you need to base your decision on. So no, it makes a lot of sense. And, one of the things that we've been working on, MZ, is something maybe a few of the listeners have already heard about, but if you haven't, you are now. It's a round table. We're going to be doing round table discussions with people. We are in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. I'm in Rolling Meadows. You're, in the Schaumburg area, and we're kind of putting together a group of small business people in this area that fall into the category of like a mid-sized business to maybe a smaller business too. Anybody that has some thoughts on how to move forward in a post-pandemic world. And it's not going to be us talking at you and telling you, what you should do. it's an opportunity to sit at a table with other people that are like-minded, that are going through some of the things regionally in the same area of business, your neighbors, to talk and communicate and to figure out ways that you can move forward as a community, and get things moving forward after all the heartache and upsetting and the shutdowns and all the things that have been going on. That sense of community is so important, and that's one of the reasons why I do this show. To get people like you, MZ, on, to share your information, because it's a cliche thing. Your network is your net worth. People say that type of thing. I say that to people all the time, kind of jokingly, but it's true. The people that the relationships that you have locally, people that you can, call on the phone and ask for advice, or support, or do business with, or, have, a friendship with. So important. So we're going to be doing something, as it stands right now. If you go to leadersession.com, you can see an outline of kind of the event that we're going to be doing on March 2nd. I believe the time that we're going to be doing it is going to be 8:30 a.m. to 10. So before you really get in gear, at work, kind of grab a coffee and you can sit in. It'll be a virtual thing. So it'll be a Zoom roundtable with probably, 5 to 8, people in the area, maybe more, maybe less. But we're going to get a group of good people together. It's the first event of hopefully, several that we'll do. And MZ, do you have any thoughts on what I just said?
Well, I think you framed it really well, Steve, and I'm really excited about it. Really, what we're trying to do is help people be the best that they can be. The goal being here, the more successful the individual is with their business, hopefully the more that they're going to be able to go out and do in society to help things be better for other people. That's really the goal of this. So we're not selling anything. We're not looking for anything. We just want to get a group of individuals together that want to share, want to work through some issues, want to help. It's
Right.
all about helping.
Right. Yeah. A community. We need more community. People have been so separated as of late, for a lot of different reasons. But with the pandemic and all that, even though we're doing this virtually, it's something that's important to get these like-minded people together for, hopefully come up with some solutions, and, maybe just make people think a little bit about what we're going to be doing moving forward. So again, that's leadersession.com. You can find, the links to everything, and, RSVP there for the event. If you have any questions, you can obviously message me. And if you want to reach out to MZ, if you are a business and you feel like you want to get in that EOS system and, get that flowing through your workflow, go to rocketbusinessaccelerator.com to learn more about MZ, and, for the show here, locallevel.show.com to see some of the other interviews with some, great people that we've had on. And MZ, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate your time, and there's another one in the books.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Steve.
Absolutely.